Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another of our LSO Knowledge and Networking Breakfast webinar series. Obviously, going virtual once again. This is our last session of the year, and as we always do, we dedicate our last session to our member marathon series. We're very lucky today to have 4 of our members really showcasing the diversity of our life sciences community and the LSO membership. We have University of Western Ontario, Vive Crop Protection, Sciteline, and Astellas. So really great cross-section of our membership. With that, let's get right into it. It's my pleasure to introduce from the University of Western Ontario, Lauren Starr from the Career Services Office, and her student intern, Holly Aquino Chen. So with that, Lauren, over to you.
Thanks so much, Jason, and thank you for this opportunity. So we just have a quick little video that we wanted to show. Let's see if it works. So short but sweet. I don't know if you caught it all, but we have some great students at Western. And we wanted to tell you a little bit about our science internship program. So everybody knows co-op. This is just a long form of co-op. And we have students from all areas of science and engineering and business. But today I'm representing science. So that includes biological sciences, biochemistry, microbiology, chemistry, even data science and computer science and math. Our interns go out to work for 8 to 16 months, which many employers really appreciate, especially when it takes about 3 months to get up to speed in a lab or in a lot of software companies as well. And they really can provide great return on investment being there for that 12 or 16 months. They also provide an amazing talent pipeline, and many interns get hired full-time afterwards after they graduate. It's an optional program, and we think that that's why our students are so successful in the workplace. I've been at this for 8 years, and I can tell you that there are so many amazing students out there, and they're very successful when they go out to work. They have to have a 70% average to get into the program. And they also must complete our preparation workshops. And that includes business communication and professionalism in the workplace. Our interns are working in life sciences all over Ontario, and some of our big companies, Sanofi Pasteur, Catalent, Therapur. And today we have an intern with us from GlaxoSmithKline. And I just asked Holly to come on and share a little bit about what she's doing with her internship, because at her site visit 2 weeks ago, her employer couldn't say enough good things about her. It was just really awesome. So Holly, maybe you can share a little bit about what you're doing for your employer, GSK.
Yeah, I'd love to. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us today. I'm Holly. I study microbiology and immunology at Western. I've completed 3 years of my Bachelor of Medical Sciences, and in September I joined GSK as a clinical study associate intern. So through my work, I support clinical operations with the delivery of clinical trials in Canada. As Lauren said, it's been a busy 3 months. In early September, I took on my first kind of big project. So I was able to actually have the opportunity to work with our global clinical team, and I supported kind of the latter half of an annual management monitoring check where we were reviewing our kind of end-to-end informed consent process in the over 20 countries where we conduct trials. So it was a big data job, cleaning up a really large data set. We had responses to over 40 questions from the sample of 20 countries. And then, I kind of took the lead on that and was able to then clarify with each individual quality and training manager in each country to really understand our initial observations. It was fun. I got to summarize all of our findings at a global meeting near the end of October. And throughout the process and a really, really rigorous follow-up procedure, I was able to dismiss more than half of our initial observations, as we found, they were actually attributable not to errors in our informed consent process, but actually to how we were conducting the check. So I made 6 suggestions for our check process that are going to be incorporated next year, and we're really, anticipating, and I'm certainly hopeful that it will save a lot of time for the countries in completing the check, and then also for our global team when analyzing and really pulling learnings from these checks. I started working more directly with studies. So by the end of September, I was working on 2 chronic hepatitis B studies that were certainly very, rigorous studies, and that first 2 weeks, you were coming into the clinic 4 times, and then a weekly visit for subjects for the next 22 weeks while on treatment. So I was able to design 2 study visit tools for site staff to use when scheduling visits. This isn't something, we always have time to do, but given the high operational complexity of these studies, it was really appreciated. So, I really tried to make this tool as functional as possible. It alerted site staff to if they were scheduling on a weekend, holiday, if visits were out of order. And it's now being implemented at quite a few sites, so that's exciting to know, and certainly very helpful in that if it can help us, really reduce protocol deviations, it's certainly a large impact in protecting subject safety. I've worked a bit in quality, which has been fun, and I think my organization's been really appreciative to have me there. For monitoring and quality, we're often trying to put ourselves in the shoes of a third party, and I think interns can be great there because we really will question everything. We're really not entrenched in any ways of working, which, I see as a great benefit. We really do latch on and really try to live by your cultural values at your organization, but we're not afraid to ask questions when it comes to things like this. So they've appreciated kind of how analytical and thorough I was with these checks. And I think we do bring up some good questions. So just in the process of learning, we're always asking questions. And one good thing that kind of came out of my question asking was I was able to propose the creation of a new informed consent form template. So that was something that I was able to take on last month and get finished. So, we're seeing that institutions are continuing to differentiate in what their needs are. And we created a new informed consent form template that met the needs of a lot of new institutions while, still giving us that control to make sure things are up to our GSK standards. So those are just some of the things that I've done in 3 months. And I think Lauren, really asked me to bring that forward because it's hard to know, what we can bring to you, what our capabilities are. We have questions too about what an internship has in store for us. So hopefully that's a bit of help. And yeah, I'll just wrap up by, a big thank you from us students to you and your organizations for considering to take an intern on. It's been a challenging year, certainly, and more than ever now, leaving university and entering the workforce is fairly uncertain. So thank you so much for investing in us and then giving us that space to really develop into the kind of well-rounded and skilled scientists we need to be to affect positive change in the future. So very grateful. And Lauren, I will hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Holly. That was amazing. Wow. That's incredible that you got that all done in 3 months. I didn't even know she did all that. So good choice there. We would love to send you a Holly. So if you are interested in talking more about this program and the government funding that's available, I'd be more than happy to jump on a Zoom call. My email is there on the screen. The government funding that is available right now is pretty significant, and we're hoping that that will continue in the new fiscal year. So we're just waiting on that announcement. But yeah, we'd love to send an intern to every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Holly. Lauren, you're spot on. Holly was a great choice. What a showcase intern to share with our community. I think all of us would appreciate having a Holly in our workplace. Just incredible experience. I think back on my own co-op experience many years ago, and I don't think I had quite the experience, I would say, or the contributions that Holly described. We do have a question coming in. I just wanted to let folks know that if there are questions, please put them in the Q&A section, and we will get to those. But let me start, Lauren, just by asking you really quickly. You mentioned the government funding program. I think most of us know about the co-op tax credits that's available, but you mentioned some other funding. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So the government tax credit is a Ontario provincial tax credit. It's up to $3,000 for every 4 months that the student is with you. So a 16-month internship gets you a $12,000 tax credit. But over and above that, the federal government has been very generous this year, and they were giving a tax credit or a federal grant, so nothing you have to pay back, of up to 75% of the student's wages. And that was up to $7,500 per 4-month term for 16 weeks. So it really is significant. And we're just waiting to find out if that 75% will continue or if it will go back to the 50% that it used to be. But even a 50% wage subsidy, you know, that's a huge amount of money in addition to your tax credit. And it wouldn't affect your shred if you're getting shred. These are separate things. So we're talking some very inexpensive, very fantastic talent.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, let me thank you again, Lauren and Holly, both for sharing with us the program and your experience and the opportunities, I think, to bring an intern on from Western. So thanks for participating and thanks for being part of our LSO community.
Thank you so much.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Darren Anderson. He's the CEO of Vive Crop Protection. This is a very special company and presentation, and the reason I say that is Vive Crop Protection is our LSO Company of the Year, and we will be recognizing them at our awards event in February next year. So please mark that in your calendars. We'll be giving you the information about that event at the end in our announcements, but it's my great pleasure to hand it over to Darren to tell us about this LSO award-winning company, Vive Crop Protection. Over to you, Darren.
Thank you, Jason. And I will just say, as the LSO Company of the Year, I've made a note to follow up with Lauren to ask about potential interns. So, you know, I just, to the extent that I can set an example here, it certainly sounds like an interesting program. And we've had a number of interns and we've hired from Western before, and we've really been quite pleased. So, yeah, I think it's great to see what they're doing. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about Vive Crop Protection. I know LSO has had a number of agriculture-focused conversations in the past. I've participated in some of them, but I know for some of the folks here, agriculture may be a little bit outside of what they normally think of from the context of life sciences. So I'm going to talk through today a little bit of what we're doing at Vive Crop Protection, why we think it's important, some of the challenges in agriculture, but there's a ton of opportunity for life sciences companies to touch agriculture. It's an incredibly innovative industry with a real desire for new technologies and new solutions, and a real need for new technologies and new solutions. So certainly encourage folks to really think of it in the context of the broader Life Sciences Ontario ecosystem. Next slide, please. So just the quick Cliff Notes or Coles Notes around Vive. So we develop advanced sustainable pesticides, both chemical and biological. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Chemical pesticides are a large existing market. There's a high growth biological segment. What we do is we're effectively a drug delivery company working in agriculture. So with pesticides, there are a lot of similar challenges around targeting and delivery on the farm that are very similar to the challenges around targeting and delivery for pharmaceuticals, or more recently for things like mRNA vaccines. And we use a polymer nanoparticle technology to control the delivery of chemical pesticides and biologicals on the farm in a very similar kind of way. We have a broad patented technology base. We're rapidly approaching profitability, and our products were used on over 1.2 million acres in 2020 on 470 farms. We are US focused, so we're not currently selling in Canada, And in fact, when we submitted our first regulatory application for approval here in Canada, I jokingly said to the team that that was going to be our first export market because we view the US as our home market, but we are headquartered here in Canada in Mississauga, and the technology was originally developed at the University of Toronto. Next slide, please. So one of the challenges today is that consumers really want more sustainable agriculture. And I think that probably applies to most of the folks in this room. You see that in the behaviors of governments, but you also see that in the behavior of buying groups. And so the Walmarts and Costco's of the world are now making sustainability a key important element of their purchasing decisions. The challenge is that growers are really more motivated by performance. They do care about sustainability quite a bit. Growers do consider themselves stewards of the land, but ultimately they do need to be able to make a profit. And farm commodity prices, at least until the last couple of months, have been at an all-time low for a long time, and that's led to ever increasing rates of farm bankruptcies in the US. And one of the areas where consumers are keen for growers to be looking at sustainability is around pesticide use. And how do we do that in a more effective way? But pesticides are really critical to both organic and non-organic farming. So the question is, what can we do to improve the sustainability footprint of pesticides to allow growers to have the performance that they need, allow them to still have a profitable operation, which is part of sustainability, but also mitigate the effects on the environment? Next slide, please. So if we look at pesticides today, they really fall into two categories. There's traditional chemical pesticides. These are the products growers have been using for decades, large, slow-growing market. These products have excellent performance, tend to be lower in labor requirements, and tend to be less expensive. So you can see all of that impacts grower profitability. But just like has been happening in pharmaceuticals, the innovation on new chemistry has really slowed down. And now it takes over $300 million and 13 years to get a new chemical to market. And then you have the consumer pressures on pesticides, as well as some of the environmental and commercial risk associated with using these traditional chemical pesticides. On the biological side, this is really using a biologically derived system, whether that's a bacteria, a fungus, or a plant extract, to help control a target pest, target weed, target disease, stimulate the growth of the plant, provide a defense mechanism, etc. So this is a relatively small market, but it's quite fast growing. It has some real advantages that are in some ways opposite to the disadvantages of chemical pesticides above. But the real challenge with biologicals is that they're really inconsistent from a performance perspective, because if you're delivering a microbe or a fungus or a plant extract, one of the biggest challenges is keeping it stable and alive long enough for it to be able to do its job when it's being applied in the field. And so what we do is we work on both pieces of this industry. We make more sustainable chemical pesticides, and I'll talk about how we do that in a moment, and we can improve the performance of biological pesticides by improving their longevity and stability. Next slide. So if we think about the performance of a pesticide and what really dominates how it works in the field, it's really how it interacts in different portions of its environment. And so you can see here 5 places where the performance of a pesticide really, really matters. It's the performance when it's in a jug, when it's being mixed with other products that a farmer is going to apply, when it's being applied in to a seed and coated onto a seed, when it's being sprayed onto a crop foliarly, or when it's being applied to the soil. And in all of these cases, if the product isn't optimized for performance, then you can have a lot of it that's wasted and doesn't do its job. That doesn't create value for growers. And just like if you take a drug and in the body it goes to an off-target location and it can cause off-target effects, similarly, pesticide that's not doing its job in the environment can cause off-target effects, and that's obviously not ideal from a sustainability point of view. Next slide, please. So we developed the Astellas delivery system, which is basically a polymer nanoparticle delivery system. Again, very similar to a drug delivery technology and very similar in some ways to the lipid nanoparticle technology that is in both the Pfizer and Moderna mRNA vaccines. And we use that delivery system to optimize the performance of a chemical pesticide, here is mostly what I'm showing, in each of these environments. So we can make products that are resistant to crystallization in the jug, so that they can be stored longer in the jug, so that you don't have issues with rework and bad product that needs to be disposed of. We can use the same technology to improve the mixing in a spray tank. And by improving that mixing, products can be applied at the same time that maybe previously couldn't be applied together, which can optimize the agronomic timing, the best time to be applying these products, and improve yields and productivity for farmers. We can make better seed coatings so that there's less of a risk of the product coming off of the seed and going off and causing issues in the environment. We've applied this to certain insecticides where that dust off issue has potential to impact pollinators, and we can basically eliminate that issue. We can make products that move better in the soil. So in a lot of cases for a soil application, product will get stuck in that first inch of topsoil and it won't get down to where the weed seeds are. And we can get it to move from that first inch down to 2 or 3 inches so that you get a much more effective application. And we can optimize the performance foliarly to make it stick and stay where it's applied instead of running off. So all of this is about targeting the delivery of these pesticides in order to improve their sustainability and environmental footprint and create real value to the growers so that they're going to increase their profitability and their commercial sustainability of their operation. Next slide. So I talked in the previous slide about applying these technologies for chemicals. We also apply the same delivery technology, but in a very different way to protect microbes or biologicals that are being applied. And here I mentioned earlier the issue with biologicals, it's keeping them stable and alive long enough to do their jobs. Well, we can use these polymer nanoparticles as effectively a fur coat or a chainmail armor to protect them from their environment and protect them from other chemicals that they might be being applied with that might destroy them, protect them from fertilizer that might be a problem, or protect them from degradation in the environment. And we've applied this technology to microbes, nucleic acids, and biological extracts. And we're actually going to be launching our first commercial product with this technology in 2021 in collaboration with another company. Next slide, please. So growers love our products for 2 reasons. The first is they typically increase yields. So they increase their productivity while also having an impact from a sustainability perspective. They also often will have qualitative advantages or other advantages in terms of the quality of what they're producing. So one of our key crops is sugar beets. And I show here that these are these big beets that are grown and then processed for sugar. And we can increase the amount of sugar in each beet, which increases the profitability of the cooperatives that these growers own that process these beets to produce sugar. We can do some similar kinds of things in corn and other crops as well. Next slide, please. So this is an example of one of our growers. This is Brent Halfman from Stephen, Minnesota. He grows about 3,000 acres of sugar beets. I won't go through all of this, but the important thing is in the bottom right. By using our product, he generates a $320,000 ROI on his 3,000 acres. He saves 60,000 gallons of water, 330 gallons of fuel, and 27 hours of farm labor. And that's why growers use our products. Next slide, please. So we do a grower survey every year. For those of you that are in the tech industry, you're used to seeing willingness to recommend or net promoter scores. We do that, and growers have absolutely loved what we've been doing. And so because of this, we've been able to grow very, very rapidly. Next slide, please. So over the next couple of years, we're going to be looking for regulatory approvals for some of those new platforms I talked about earlier, particularly around the foliar application. We are expecting to receive our first products approvals in Canada, and we're looking to broaden our commercial activities into Canada and California. We do partner with other chemical companies where they will in-license our technology and put it into their own jugs that they sell. We're looking to broaden out those activities. And then there are also some in-licensing opportunities that we're looking at where we want to have our own active ingredients. In a lot of ways, those of you that are familiar with how the drug delivery industry has evolved, you can see some similarities in terms of how our business practices have evolved. Next slide, please. So I'll wrap up there, other than that to say, we're really excited about what we're doing. We're also looking for good people. We're hiring a marketing associate right now, as well as a technical sales agronomist in the US. I think we'll be hiring some scientific folks as well in the first 6 months of next year. And then, we're expecting to roughly double the size of the team between July of 2021 and early 2022. So if anybody's interested, we'd love to chat with you. We're growing rapidly, really excited about what we're doing. And again, I just want to highlight agriculture. There's so many cool needs for technology and science. And I encourage those of you that maybe have something that are maybe a little agriculture curious around whether or not what you're doing has some applicability. I'd be happy to talk to you. And if we can go to the next slide. And here's my contact information. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Darren. That was fantastic. I got to use that term, agriculture curious. That's amazing. I think we actually have a lot of our members that are agriculture curious once they hear that we do include agri-food technologies, because there's such a strong link with all areas of life sciences, and your presentation really drew those parallels quite nicely, especially the drug delivery piece of it as well. Just out of curiosity, I guess that leads to an obvious question. Have you considered at all the technology that you're using for drug delivery applications? Obviously, I know you're squarely focused on what you're doing right now, but long-term horizon, is that an area that you see your technology heading at all?
So it's funny, I always jokingly say that for entrepreneurs, our eyes are always bigger than our stomachs. And so I will say, yes, we've thought about it. There are a number of applications for this technology outside of agriculture. Pharmaceuticals is obviously, like drug delivery is obviously one. We've also looked at, there's a number of, if you think about like probiotics in food and other similar applications where there's a need to either deliver the biologicals or even deliver nutraceutical type applications. That having been said, there's also an enormous opportunity in agriculture. And one of the key benefits to our technology is that we can make it relatively inexpensively at very large scale. And so we try to focus on business opportunities where that is a key competitive advantage. And from, drug delivery isn't one of the industries where scale or cost is really as important as it is in some of these other industries. So I think it's more likely that we would be looking at using this technology in some of those more consumer-facing opportunities. That having been said, I never say never, and we're obviously, if there are folks here that are interested in a conversation, we'd be happy to do so. But that's the way we've thought about it today.
Well, that's great. Again, I think this is a terrific presentation to show the diversity of our life sciences community. What a great success story. You can obviously see why Vive was chosen as our company of the year. Great Canadian success story. I'm glad Canada is going to be your first export market. That's exciting that product actually is going to be coming here and used here. And the fact that you're growing rapidly and hiring, exciting times. So appreciate you taking the time to share with us the story of Vive.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Darren. It's now my pleasure to introduce Chad Walsh, Chief Executive Officer of Sciteline. Sciteline's a very interesting company as the entire world has gone virtual during this pandemic. Sciteline's been operating a virtual platform for quite some time, and certainly it's very timely to have Chad here to share with us what Sciteline is doing and their particular platform. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Chad.
Thanks a lot, Jason. Appreciate the opportunity, and congratulations to the first two presenters. Those are both exciting projects. And interestingly, actually, my first introduction to the LSO group was when I worked at the Ministry of Agriculture years back, and I see some folks on the call who I knew from way back then. So that presentation made me feel like I've really come full circle, and so good luck with everything you're doing. Sciteline is, as Jason said, a Toronto-based SaaS startup that's working to accelerate an industry shift towards virtual or decentralized clinical trials. And again, it's really excited to be able to talk just a little bit about what we're doing today. First of all, I did want to say just how happy we are to have been able to join and support Life Sciences Ontario. I certainly don't want to overstate it, but we're just really excited to be a part of their mandate. And I think of all years, 2020 is really a banner year in my mind anyway for the life sciences industry. Count me among the people who thinks that it's been a heroic year for the efforts of a lot of people working in the industry. So we're really happy to support the mandate. And from our perspective, we're excited to become a member and hopefully network and learn over time from some of the other great companies that are associated with Life Sciences Ontario. So thanks again for the opportunity. Brian, next slide, please. So who is Sciteline? Today, I'm just going to quickly talk about the who, the what, and the how. So we'll start with who is Sciteline. We think there's a real need for innovative ways of conducting clinical research. We're trying to help to rethink how clinical trials are conducted to better fit the everyday lives of research patients. We think it's time that the life sciences industry expanded the use across more therapeutic areas of decentralized trials. And we're currently working with pharmaceutical companies, CROs, hospitals, and academic institutions in Canada and the US as they are trying to accelerate the development of new therapies. We think that we can improve efficiency of clinical trials, improve patient engagement, and speed up timelines. And we think that by focusing on the patient and deploying some of this technology, that clinical trials can increase the representation of study populations by things like age, race, geographic regions, and backgrounds, which again, I think is a really important goal for the industry. And we're looking forward to finding more and more folks to help us challenge the status quo. You can go to the next slide. When I talk about who we are, I never want to forget to mention the team that I work with every day. It's a group of folks that come here. I'm in our office right now, who come here every day, mostly virtually, to really try and impact change. I think importantly, we've got a group of people who've introduced technologies and disruptive technologies to other parts of the healthcare sector before and to other industries. And those folks are really helping to support us as we try and drive change through this new industry. Similar to Darren, we're hiring almost on an ongoing basis. So I would love to talk to folks who have some interest in what it is we're doing. I thought that I would give a little background on what the problem is that we're trying to solve. What better time for a quick story than a Thursday morning virtual breakfast? So when we think about the traditional way clinical trials have been operated, I think it's important to realize that one of the main features is that they're tied to a physical site. It's a simple thing that a lot of people don't really think of, but when you're tied to a physical site, that means that the participants need to travel to that physical site. They need to therefore live within driving distance of that physical site. And so you're already creating a level of burden for that participant to take part in your trial. And you're limiting the pool of people that you can reach because they have to be within driving distance conceptually of where you're operating your trial. And so what has this traditional model yielded? Historically, people on this call will know the numbers. 80% of clinical trials fail to finish on time. And I would say somewhere around 37 to 40% of trials miss their enrollment targets. Somewhere along the lines of 40% of patients will drop out before the study endpoint. And all of this has led to increased costs over time. We've all seen the charts that show the increased cost of drug development. And although this isn't the only reason for that, working out of this traditional model and having a whole bunch of those limitations is certainly an element that's driving increased costs in clinical research. And I think with some notable exceptions, one of them being Pfizer in 2011 running the remote trial, and a few other people who were trying to drive this type of change towards decentralized trials, what you're left with is an industry that's been really slow to pick up the use of new technologies, especially when it comes to decentralized clinical trials. And so what happened in 2020 that made it different? Like so much else, the answer is COVID-19. When COVID-19 hit, a whole bunch of trials were left with Again, largely because people couldn't travel to physical sites and didn't want to travel to physical sites. Recruitment just fell off a cliff, and a huge number of trials needed to delay their research entirely. People will be well aware of this on the call. And so what that created was, first of all, a move by regulators to issue guidance around the use of virtual trials, encouraging people to use things like electronic consent and other digital means of working in order to mitigate the risk of trial failure. So really you have a scenario where a lot of people in 2020 started to move towards this technology, initially for risk mitigation, but our hypothesis is that people will come for the risk mitigation and that they'll stay for the innovation. And so what you've seen in 2020 is an acceleration of this existing trend. Sciteline probably had a 10-year plan in terms of the acceleration of this technology into trials. That has been collapsed greatly, as with the whole industry. And for people who are paying attention, you will have seen just in the last few days, a global alliance called the Decentralized Trial Research Alliance, which is really all the kind of big healthcare companies, patient groups, CROs, and regulators coming together to really try to drive and incentivize a move towards decentralized clinical trials. So 2020 is a real inflection point, we think, for the industry as a whole, as people move towards more decentralized technology in trials. And so where does Sciteline come in? On the next slide, Brian. So we have a software platform that we're using now. Maybe I'll highlight our biggest use case so far. It's a 3,000 person COVID-19 trial that's happening across Canada and the US. And in that trial, we've been able to deploy our technology to use things like electronic consent. So again, there we're reducing the need for someone to come in and meet with a member of the research team to go over the consent process. They're using our virtual visit platform so they can visit kind of like we're talking now and eliminate what is usually 1 to 3 hours per patient per week of in-person visits, depending on the size and scope of the trial. And they're also using our triggers and alerts function, which is meant to be kind of an early warning sign of adverse events in a trial. And obviously we're able to do this because we're operating a secure system across Canada and the US. And we've done lots and lots of work from a privacy and compliance perspective to make sure that we can work in this space. And so we're excited about where we are now, but we know that this trend is accelerating and that the industry is moving in this direction rapidly. And so that's why at the bottom of the page there, you can see in 2021, we'll be releasing new features as a part of our offering. I think most importantly, around recruitment. We know that's one of the biggest cost drivers for trials, and we want to be able to build in our platform the ability to help with recruitment as a lead-in to the other capabilities that we're talking about. And then when you're in the trial, we're also going to be releasing the capabilities to connect directly to folks in their home via wearable technology. And so why that's important is we know we need to be able to collect real-world information and also vital signs from participants in their homes. That's going to enhance the data set that the researcher has, and it's going to improve the experience for patients and lower that burden that we talked about even further. And finally, like most industries, clinical trials do have issues with payment, and so adding in the ability to do some of the financial management aspects to it, we think is really, really important. Next slide, Brian. So that's Sciteline. We think that the world has never been more aware of clinical trials. You just have to turn on the news and you see it's probably the top story every day is something related to clinical trials and the COVID-19 vaccine. We think this creates a real opportunity to educate and inform people around the benefits of clinical research and clinical trials. And if we do that in concert with deploying new technologies and the ability for people to access these trials in an easier way, we think that it's going to be a net win for life sciences companies and for participants in trials. Sciteline, I think it's important to say, is just a small part of this ecosystem. One of the reasons we're excited to be a part of this call and a part of Life Sciences Ontario is that We need lots of partners and lots of people working with us to help drive this change, and to help us learn and grow in terms of what the needs are for patients and for the life science industry more broadly. So I know we're short on time and limited by some technology today, but I would love the chance to speak to anyone who has comments or feedback or questions offline. You can see my contact information there. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys today. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Chad. That was a great presentation and very timely. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's I think it's an exciting time for the life sciences industry writ large. Certainly, the challenges of this pandemic has shone a bright spotlight on the need for innovative life sciences companies like Sciteline, who are providing solutions at a critical time that we need them. I'm really curious to get your thoughts. I've heard many people talk about how they have had and been developing technologies for many years for virtual delivery, for digital health, and adoption has been somewhat slow. And come the pandemic situation, it's been accelerated at a rate that we've never seen before. And then there's a lot of questions around, will that acceleration continue post-pandemic? Will we slip backwards, etc.? So wondering if maybe you could give your thoughts in terms of your experience from pre-COVID to during COVID to where you think things are headed post-COVID.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. It's a good question. Pre-COVID, we saw, kind of like everybody else, a real challenge in getting some of this technology in use. People are used to what they're used to, and it can be difficult, especially when the stakes are so high and the costs are so high, and you're developing something that's as important as a lot of the things we're talking about. Sometimes the risk tolerance is pretty low, given all the other complicating factors that you have. So I think COVID-19 has been huge because it's really unlocked the potential of this, and I think shone a light on the potential efficiencies on all sides. And so we think that this is going to continue to accelerate. And I think, as I said, you can see the industry really getting behind a push to kind of move it in this direction. I think it's finally time for us to start building trials around patients, because we have the technology to do so, and we think that's going to lead to better outcomes. So I guess to answer your question, I actually think 2021 will probably be a year where we accelerate even further with this technology, and would love to come back and keep you guys updated about what's happening.
Oh, we'd love to have you back, Chad, to hear how things are going. So we'll definitely have to earmark that in our calendars. Thank you so much for sharing today what's happening with Sciteline. Great technology, great story, and again, another example of the innovation that we have happening in our life sciences community. So thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
It's now my pleasure to introduce our final speaker of the day. Frank Stramaglia is the General Manager of Astellas Pharma Canada, one of our pharmaceutical members. And as Chad said at the beginning of his talk, our industry is made up of heroic efforts across the sector, and Astellas is certainly one of those firms that delivers that level of heroism even before the pandemic in terms of serving patient needs. So, Frank, it's a pleasure to have you here today, and over to you.
Thanks, Jason, and really appreciate the opportunity to be with you all this morning. What an exciting time to be in our industry and to be in this sector in Canada. I always enjoy opportunities to hear from people like Chad with all the amazing stuff that's going on, not only in Ontario, but across Canada, with such a vibrant environment of strong entrepreneurs and leaders. And it really does inspire me every day when I hear stories such as the one we just heard from Chad about what his organization is up to. So real pleasure today to be here with you. I want to take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about Astellas Pharma Canada, and look forward to the opportunity. So as was said, my name is Frank Stramaglia. I'm the general manager of Astellas Canada. New to my role, started in April of this year, and I know you're thinking, what a time to start leading an organization in Canada. Certainly has been a challenge, but come with many opportunities. I've been with Astellas for 13 years in various different roles in the pharmaceutical industry for 20 years now. All of my time has been in Canada, have not worked outside of Canada. So I'm a very passionate Canadian and very dedicated to this life sciences industry in Canada. I want to tell you a little bit about the great company I work for, Astellas. Astellas is the first Japanese pharmaceutical company to enter Canada. And since then, we've evolved quite significantly as an organization. When we first came here, we had a strategic vision to stay in some certain swim lanes and therapeutic areas. But over the years, we've really changed our model like many other pharma organizations have. And that's to continually to invest and find opportunities to support the health and well-being of people across the globe. And to do that by really looking at unmet medical needs and taking a scientific approach that doesn't limit us into therapeutic areas, but more so allows us to tap into kind of well-characterized pathophysiology in biology, and then marry that up with modality technologies to find out where are the opportunities across multiple disease states to meet unmet medical needs. So that's our current approach. And Astellas has certainly taken this approach very seriously and ventured into many different areas that you can see on this slide as well. Also very proud of the fact that Astellas just recently opened a building just outside the Boston area, the Astellas Institute for Regenerative Medicine. And we also are very active in the area of cell therapy. In Canada, Astellas is prominent in the immunology space and transplant medicine. We also have an oncology portfolio with two main assets that cover prostate cancer as well as in hematology. We've recently launched an agent in the space of advanced relapse refractory acute myeloid leukemia. We also have a product for overactive bladder in urology for patients who suffer significant quality of life burden from incontinence. So that's our current portfolio right now for us in Canada, and we're pretty excited about some of the agents we have in our pipeline. Next slide. What I'm really proud of and most proud of is our organization and the culture we've created, and that certainly is a reflection of the Astellas family, as I call it. We have been named Great Places to Work for the 5th year in a row, also recognized by Great Places to Work as a best workplace for women, inclusion, giving back, for healthcare, best workplaces in Ontario, and for mental wellness. And that last one on mental wellness, I think we can all appreciate is a really important piece for us and something we've really had to focus on for our employees during the COVID-19 pandemic, but certainly very proud of what this organization has been able to accomplish and the culture we've been able to build. We're located just outside, I should have said that up front, just outside Toronto in beautiful Markham, and we've been there for quite a number of years. Next slide. So as I said, our people is what makes this organization so great. Like the others you've heard from already this morning, what inspires me about this industry day in, day out is the passion and commitment that I see within our organization and in other organizations from everybody who is so committed to translating innovative science into value for patients to improve the health and well-being of Canadians. And that's what is our common purpose, and that's what motivates us day in and day out. Next slide. Astellas, really believes in collaboration. I think it's incredibly important for us to be successful, that we not only continue to drive research and development and challenge ourselves to go down different areas of exploration from a research perspective, but we also got to make sure we're doing that with the experts. So we've been quite active in partnering with research institutions and academia across the globe, again chasing that goal of finding therapies to support unmet medical needs. So, I think the other thing I'll just note that, while we do all these things, and invest heavily in research, we are also very proud of what we do from a corporate social responsibility. Just this past year, we've donated over $250,000 to charities across Canada at a time when Canadians need it most. So that's something that obviously is very important to the culture and the fabric of our organization at Astellas Canada. And next slide. So while I wrap up, I just want to state that I'm a firm believer that the life science sector is critical to not only Ontario but to Canada, to Canadians. And it's going to take everyone in this sector, again, to work collaboratively into the future to continue to expand and evolve, the care for Canadians. And with COVID-19, I think this has certainly presented a unique opportunity, which has already been said, for this sector. And that the way I expressed it to our organization is that the entire globe is resting on hope to get us through this global pandemic, and that hope sits on this sector. And what I'm incredibly proud of is how this sector has stepped up to deliver, not just with the science behind the vaccines that are coming to market, but all of the other people involved in this life sciences sector that are needed to make sure that that product and those products can come to Canadians. So if there's ever a time for us to be leveraging the voice of this industry and this sector and speaking about the value we bring, not only to governments and stakeholders, but to our friends and our family, this is the time for us to do it. And as we do that, I think we should also not lose sight of some of the big challenges and hurdles we face, in particular, some of the policy changes that are evolving right now in Canada, that while they may have embarked on that journey to ultimately preserve innovation coming to Canadians, and at the same time ensuring that it's affordable, the policy and regulations that we're seeing through PNPRB don't quite meet that expectation, and it does present some concern across our industry that we will be hindered in our ability to continue to bring timely innovation to Canadians, or maybe even bring innovation to Canadians at all. So it's important when things like this are transpiring around us that we work together with a strong and unified voice to ensure that the value of our industry and that our commitment and intent to patients is heard by all stakeholders across the country. So with that, really want to thank you for the opportunity. I'd love to continue to meet more of the members within this organization of Life Sciences Ontario, and we are very much a proud member and supporter of Life Sciences Ontario.
Thank you, Frank. I couldn't have said it better myself. You hit all the key points. I love the fact that you talked about with pride the corporate culture that you've developed at Astellas over the years. Your comment about mental health and wellness is well taken, I think, for all of us that have been coping through these very challenging times. But I love the fact too that you're a proud Canadian leading this multinational organization, and that you're a proud member of the life sciences community. And I feel the exact same way. And I want to emphasize that we should all feel that pride, especially now. It is our industry, it is our sector, it is our science that is going to lead us out of this current situation, and we should be wearing that as a badge of honor, and with great pride as we're talking with our family members and our community members beyond our life sciences sector. So I would encourage everyone to definitely do that. Frank, you talked a little bit, and I've asked this question of others as well, in terms of maybe some forward-looking, since we are in such unprecedented times, and certainly the pandemic has created opportunities, but it's also creating some challenges. You mentioned the regulatory challenges, but one of the other ones that we're hearing about is, and there was an article actually just this morning in the CBC talking about potential tsunami of cancer incidents because delayed diagnostic testing, because of delayed treatment, etc. You know, from your perspective, you know, what are some of the concerns that you have in your role of leading a pharmaceutical company operating this space, looking out over the next year or two?
Yeah, it's a very good point. It's something that, you know, for our organization, we're certainly keeping an eye on because we are in the oncology space and we're seeing this, you know, month over month, let's say, backlog of patients or patients who are not getting diagnosed where they typically would have without the environment we face with COVID-19. We're also seeing that in transplant medicine as well, which is quite concerning because, you know, the gift of life and organ donation is so scarce and rare in our country. And so when those resources become available, when hospitals are shut down and not able to do those transplants, that really is a travesty without a doubt. So for us as an organization, our goal is to try and be as proactive as possible to work with the healthcare community. We should be doing the same thing, I think, with governments to, again, come forward as a solution provider to assist them with anticipating what might come. I think the other concern for us, and again, if we're doing this collaboratively with the goal of ensuring we can perhaps provide the best care as possible to these patients when the onslaught of patients hopefully come back into the system, is also to manage supply. Because I think that's something we've been really challenged with this year, is just an uncharacteristic ordering patterns and transfer of supply throughout the system, with, you know, the amount of excess ordering that was done at the beginning of the first wave, changes to prescription lengths, changes again in ordering in anticipation of prescription lengths being increased, but also with wave 2. And I think this next supply concern or challenge will come with this potential influx of patients entering the system for sure.
Thanks, Frank. And I know we're running out of time, but I had a couple questions come in. I want to ask you at least one more question, and maybe
Sure.
keep your answer as brief as possible, as we have to wrap up. But I think it's important because you did mention this, and it was something that I commented on. You talked about implementing some initiatives around ensuring the mental health and wellness of your employees. Can you maybe speak briefly to what are some of the initiatives that you've put in place during COVID-19?
Yeah, great question. A couple of things is very early on, making sure that we were communicating as quickly as possible with our employees. Also being a bit more proactive. Like many companies, we have an employee assistance program provided by a third party. But rather than just reminding people that resource is there, being a bit more proactive, pulling off some of the support that those companies offer, that company offers, and really advertising that. We also instilled a no meeting Fridays to give people some time to take a step back and get some free space. We've also really encouraged employees to use a portion of their vacation earlier in the year when the pandemic was in a quite acute phase and people really needed time to step away. And then throughout the remainder of the year, really again tried to ensure that we're connecting with employees as frequently as possible and really listening to them. We have also doing a survey every other month to find out what their needs are and how their needs are changing personally, but also professionally, so that we can continue to offer support to our employees.
Well, thank you, Frank, and thank you once again for participating, being a part of the LSO community. It's an amazing story again, and I can see why you have such a successful culture at Astellas, and we're proud to have you as a member. So thank you again.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I have a few announcements to make. Brian, yep, the LSO Awards Dinner and Vive, as I mentioned, will be our Company of the Year. We will be celebrating some other awards. It will be a virtual event. This will be on February 24th from 7 to 8:30. There'll also be some virtual networking at that session. So please register and sign up. That will be available shortly. And we look forward to seeing everybody virtually in February. Finally, a thank you to all of our sponsors and supporters, our platinum sponsors, Alexion, Sanofi, Shift Health, Silicon Valley Bank, Innovative Medicines Canada, Merck, and PR Associates that just joined us as a new platinum sponsor. Gold sponsors, Taiho Pharma, Admere Bioinnovations, Antibody, Stryker, Horizon, and Biotalent. Our silver sponsors, EY, CRB, University of Toronto, BDO, and Roche. And thank you all for attending. And since this is our last virtual event of the year, I want to wish everyone a happy and safe holiday season. Again, it's a very difficult time and very challenging, especially this time of year, but please stay vigilant and stay safe. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you all next year.